watching the Bleeding Big Blue YouTube channel, home of the podcast and some other content. Also, film content to come soon. Alex Savage back again. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like and comment on our videos. Our podcasts are available on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. Today I'm going to be going over the Giants' schedule and a rather further evaluation and discussion of my personal thoughts. My friend Sean and my brother Luca obviously predicted the Giants to go 3-13 by voting. We had a thing going that 2 against 1 would win on the stream, but I don't feel that way. The Giants are going to go 3-13, and I'm going to express my further evaluations regarding that. I also have a rant on Pro Football Focus over their last tweet this afternoon. I know a lot of people don't like them. I know a lot of people like them, but that's the way this is going to go. Keep watching. It's going to be interesting. Okay, so if the tweet is clear enough, on my computer, I have the PFF Pro Football Focus tweet. Tweet says, the teams most likely to have the number 1 overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. 1 is Chargers, 2 is Jaguars, 3 is Giants, 4 is Bengals, and 5 is Dolphins. Now, for 1 second, I'm actually going to come off as an NFL fan. I'm not going to come off as a Giants fan. I'm going to come off as an NFL fan. Pro Football Focus, for the longest time, and this is my opinion, and a lot of people have this opinion because they don't like Pro Football Focus either. They have their analytic propaganda out there that mostly promotes the big teams. Now, they do have PFF Giants, PFF Jets, PFF Bengals, PFF Steelers. They have PFFs for every team to try to make it look like they support every team. Well, they really don't. I'm going to make you try to believe that right now. Now, if some of the people that do support Pro Football Focus are haters of the low-ranked and the not well-run organizations, like I'm talking about the Giants, I'm talking about the Jets, I'm talking about the Bengals as well. Basically, the people that support this, what I'm saying, is the people who hate these teams, like if you're a Raiders fan, or if you're a Chiefs fan, or if you're a fan of a good team and you just like to hate on these teams. Now, that's not all the people. That's not all the people that support Pro Football Focus. Actually, analytical people support Pro Football Focus as well. I don't know why, but that's their opinion. Also, people at Fox Sports and ESPN and all those guys, they support Pro Football Focus too. And look on this. Why? It's extra content and it's extra reference. I'm not going to say they're wrong on every single subject, but they have constant bias against the Giants and against teams that don't do as well as the Chiefs, the Steelers, the Patriots. They have been rooting those teams on for the longest time in terms of, pro football propaganda and, just hyping those teams to the highest extent. But when it comes to the lower ranked teams like the Chargers, the Jaguars, and the Giants, it's really irritating to see that, they're picking on those teams just because they're not well run. And you know what? It's also another thing too. That thing being that it depends how much they run on analytics or the premium data that PFF is putting out. If those teams don't run by what they're saying, they're going to say, oh, you're wrong. Like, for instance, the Giants, they took Andrew Thomas at 4th overall. A couple months before, they said, oh, they should take Tua at 4. Why would they take Tua at 4th overall when you knowingly have a franchise quarterback in Daniel Jones? Now, the future, we'll see what happens. Why would you take Tua at 4th overall when you have Daniel Jones? That's stupid because you knowingly wasted the Daniel Jones pick 6th overall in 2019. We're not the Cardinals. We're not wasting 2 years in a row first-round picks on a quarterback. Now, going back to the Chargers, going back to being an actual NFL fan, I'm open to it. I make fun of the Chargers a lot because they didn't have a huge venue when it comes to fans and stadium. But now that they're in a different stadium, they might get more traction. And they have a better football team than last year. They did have an under 500 record last year. But my point is, they've retooled their offensive line. They signed Brian Bulaga. They did get Chris Harris. They did get Kenneth Murray from Oklahoma. So, looking at that, even though Kenneth Murray's a rookie and Chris Harris is coming from the Broncos and people say, oh, he's washed, that's like something to get exciting about. But no, apparently, according to these morons, they're going to get the 1st overall pick for next year. People are already doing mock drafts, but they've been listing the Jaguars at number 1. And to be honest, no bias intended here, but I think the Jaguars do have a shot at the number 1 overall pick. Now we go to the Giants. They signed James Bradbury. They just signed Blake Martinez. They also have Andrew Thomas. They retooled some of their offensive line. They retooled some of their defense, getting linebackers, getting people in the secondary like Xavier McKinney. Now, are they going to be playoff good? No. They're not going to be like that for at least another year. I say 2021, 2022. That doesn't mean they're going to be the first overall pick like they project. And they've been biased against this team for the longest time. Again, propaganda, analytics towards the more and the better football teams like the Cowboys, maybe the Eagles, the Chiefs, the big teams. But they crap on the Giants constantly. And that really pisses me off because they supposedly know what they're talking about. And a lot of people say, oh, Pro Football Focus knows what they're talking about. They're the best analytical team. When you're making picks like that just to demine the low teams, that's just crap propaganda right there. That's just propaganda that's not really good. And a lot of people will co-sign it because, number one, they love analytics, and especially this day and age. Number two, because the rivals of those teams like people that hate on the team's rivals. They like people who hate on the team's rivals, probably like Cowboy fans, probably like Eagle fans. One team that should be here is the Redskins. They do have a somewhat decent secondary with Fuller and Ronald Darby. Is that offense figured out? We don't know because they only got Terry McLaurin. They do have Adrian Peterson. They do have Dwayne Haskins going into his second year. Now, Dwayne Haskins didn't do necessarily good last year because of the crap run organization, and Bill Callahan took over for more than half the year last year. That's a team that should be up here. Yes, they're a good defensive line, but is their offense going to be able to prove it? Now, going forth, the Bengals, they retooled some of their defense. They got Mackenzie Alexander. They did draft a couple pieces there. They also got Trey Waynes from the Vikings, as they did Mackenzie Alexander. Now, going back to offense, their offensive line is still in shambles right now. They do have Tyler Boyd. A.J. Green is failing to stay healthy and wants a trade, apparently. You've got Joe Burrow, who's the starting quarterback from day one because you don't have Andy Dalton anymore. My point is, the Bengals are not necessarily going to be a good team this year. Bengals fans can hype them all they want. My opinion, I don't think that they're going to be that good this year. I think between 3 wins and maybe 5 wins at the most because you still need to retool that offensive line. They probably have a tough schedule, knowing within the division that all 3 teams are better than them. Going number 5 to the Dolphins. Now, this is a team that I can suggest can beat the Patriots this year. They could beat all of their divisional rivals at least once this year. The Jets, the Bills, and the Patriots. That's what I suggest because you got Kyle Van Noy on defense, you got Byron Jones on defense. They tried retooling that offensive line with Austin Jackson and Ted Karras. Offense, I'm still a little shaky about, but that defense looks better. I don't think they're getting the number 1 overall pick, and I don't think they're tanking again because they had like $93 million in cap space. But if you don't go by Pro Football Focus, then you are wrong, apparently. They keep putting out this propaganda, analytical bullcrap that everybody keeps believing. And if you believe it for a certain reason, yeah, that's fine. I know a lot of people who actually believe Pro Football Focus is doing a good job. That's their opinion. But if you like Pro Football Focus because they're shitting on other teams that aren't as good, you need to get a life, seriously. So that's my rant on Pro Football Focus. So right here, I didn't log in, which it kind of screwed me with because all my changes were saved when I logged in, but I could always look back at the video and see what my predictions were. Now, let's take a look at the Giants' schedule. They do have probably one of the toughest schedules in the league next year. Luca and Sean said, they're going to go 3-13, 4-12. Well, I don't believe that. Between 4 and 7 wins next year for this team. I do believe that they revitalized their offensive line. It's going to take time, and they also did some good on the defensive side. But let's take a look at the schedule. Week 1, they verse Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football. I'm going to hand this one to the Steelers, as I did in the other video. I think that the Steelers don't usually come into Week 1 prepared. They usually get better as the season goes on. But when you're facing a revitalized offensive line, and TJ Watt's on that pass rush, and as well as Bud Dupree and Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt, the offensive line might have a tough time dealing with them. I compare them a lot to the Vikings. I don't think they're as good as the defensive line for the 49ers, but we'll get to that. But right now, as I'm pointing out here, I think it's going to be a close game. We'll see if Big Ben returns to the quarterback position healthy, 100%, because remember, he was out last year, or most of last year. So we'll see what happens with that, but right now I think the Giants take 0-1 week 1. Week 2, I'm handing this one to the Giants. Now, last year, Chicago was talented, coming off of a wild card loss to the Eagles because of Cody Parkey. It was also blocked, so we know that one for a fact, but that doesn't matter right now. They finished subpar last year. They didn't get into the playoffs. No, they didn't. But the final score between those two teams last year was 14-19. The Giants went 4-12 last year, and obviously Pat Shurmur was fired. Now, looking at it, it was closer than it should have been last year. Corey Ballantyne kept getting burned in the slot by numerous receivers like Taylor Gabriel and Allen Robinson. The fact that it was that close because the Giants had no talent, and then you had Khalil Mack and that good defensive line, I'm surprised that they didn't get blown out. Reason being, they had that good defensive line, and they still do. Akeem Hicks, I think Eddie Goldman is still on the team, if I'm not mistaken. I would have to check that out. As I said, Khalil Mack. You got Eddie Jackson at safety, 26-year-old. You still got Kyle Fuller. You added Troy Pride from Notre Dame. But my point is, it was closer than it was supposed to be last year, and they effectively have the same team as last year. And the Giants have improved. And the fact that it was close last year when the Giants had no talent tells me that the Giants are going to win this game. Not based off of last year, but I'm just making a prediction. I'm going to make this note before we go on right now. We'll be changing these predictions monthly because as we get closer to the season, we know who's going to be put out on the field in September, and I'm going to be just shaking it up a little. San Francisco 49ers. Now, last time we faced them Monday Night Football in San Francisco in 2018, we had, I would say, more talent than 2019, but I would say less talent than we do have this year because some of it is proven, some of it is not. Now, 2018 team was based off of free agent and waiver wire pickups. Jamon Brown, Spencer Pulley, Corey Coleman, those guys were picked up, and we ultimately won that game because Eli threw a touchdown to Sterling Shepard. Our defense was on and off because Landon Collins couldn't cover George Kittle that game. My point being, San Francisco 49ers, unless they take a drop-off, they went to the Super Bowl last year. They still have that good defensive line. They replaced DeForest Buckner with Javon Kinlaw from South Carolina. I don't think that the Giants are going to be able to handle it like they would handle Pittsburgh. I'm not saying they would handle Pittsburgh or could not, but I think they would handle Pittsburgh better because Pittsburgh has, I would say, not as strong as a defensive line as San Francisco. San Francisco also has a good secondary. They have a good offense. They drafted Brandon Ayuk out of Arizona State. That helps the offense. So, and, with Deebo Samuel and Ayuk, I think that Bradbury could do good. I just don't know that Baker's going to have that improvement week 3 as early as they play the 49ers. So I'm going to give this win to the 49ers. Take a look at next week. This one's actually on par. I have the Giants beating the LA Rams. People are going to say, it's an out west game, but, they can't transfer their energy. But if you take a look at the LA Rams, they have not been the same since the Super Bowl. They have had a huge drop-off. Their offensive line hasn't been the same. They got rid of Todd Gurley. So I just don't... They have a good team. They have good talent in place. I just don't think they can execute. They're kind of like the Falcons in this case. And all these record predictions on the side, they're not true because, again, I didn't log in. But I just think the Giants have a better motivation going into that game because they're facing another Western team. So I give the Giants a win there, and I think that they're going to beat the Rams. That's that. Going into Week 5, they verse Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to give Dallas the win there. First time going into Jerry World. I think it's a possibility they could try to beat them this year. They almost beat them in 2018, Week 17, but that didn't happen because, the defense gave up, but also Dak was still playing as Zeke was not playing, and he was getting ready for the wild card game. But the point is, first trip to Jerry World, they haven't done well there since 2016, so I'm going to give Dallas the win there. Going to Week 6, I think the Giants will have a split series with the Washington Redskins going from Week 6 and 9. I think the Giants are going to win this one right here. Obviously, you have Chase Young and that sturdy defensive line. You also got Kendall Fuller and Ronald Darby on the defense. I just think the Giants have a better offense, and I think they can get past the defense if execution goes well. Obviously, we're so many months in advance, so that's an early prediction right now. I think they will have the home game. Each team will win their home game, pointing out to Week 9 as well. Week 7, Thursday Night Football, short week against the Philly Eagles. Giants haven't done well on Thursday Night Football lately, and the last time they faced the Eagles, they got crushed. So, it's not going to be easy. It won't be easy at all. And you're going into Philly. You're not staying at home. You're going into Philly. It's still a short week. You have less time to prepare, and the Eagles are a better team than the Redskins. So I take the Eagles on that one. They win Thursday Night Football. Week 8, another primetime game. They do have a week and 3 days, I would say, to prepare. I still don't think they're getting the win on this one. I think the Buccaneers are going to win. Brady's on offense. We'll see by that time if the Giants have figured out how to cover a tight end or a running back. They don't have much of a running game, but they do have a passing game with Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Rob Gronkowski. Their defense is slowly getting better, even though their secondary is really more inexperienced. So I'm going to give the Buccaneers the win there. Week 9, as I said, home team will win that. That's going to be a win for Washington. Going into Week 10, Philly and NYG. Now, this is a tough one because this is one of the teams I bet we can beat, is Philly. But, last year, when we were in Philly, we had the chance to win, but Pat Shurmur and James Bettcher did not make adjustments at halftime. We ended up scoring no points. Second half of the game, and we lost in overtime. Because Philly got the ball first, to my intention. And I was watching the game, and I was sick when Zach Ertz got the game-winning touchdown. But I'm going to make a hot pick here. It's going to change. I think the Giants finally get their revenge on Philly for the last couple of years. I think they beat them 1 o'clock game. They finally beat them November 15th at the MetLife Stadium. Week 11's a bye. Giants take the win over the Bengals. Bengals might not be the team that everybody anticipates, they're going to do good with Joe Burrow. It's going to take time. They have retooled that defense a little bit and their offense is good, as I mentioned when I was ranting on PFF. It's just, will A.J. Green stay on the field? Will Joe Burrow, make a mistake or two? Will he make a mistake or two that possibly gives the Giants the game? It's going to come down to the defense. And that's how that's going to happen. But I think Jones will be more advanced than Burrow, and I think the offensive line is better for the Giants than it is the Bengals, because I don't know. I forget if they drafted on the offensive line, but you still got Jonah Williams. He's coming into his first year technically. It's really his second year, but it's his first year. He did, I think he had a torn labrum going into camp last year, and that was the season for him. Week 13, NYG going to Seattle. Another road trip. They're not going to be able to handle the noise in Seattle. I give Seattle the win here. I think it's a 4:05 game. 4:05 game. And the noise of Seattle is very, very loud. And Russell Wilson could dot this defense all around. And DK Metcalf's going to give James Bradbury a hell of a challenge. Maybe they'll put him on the outside with Baker just to test them. But right now, I think Seattle has a better roster than New York does. I'm going to give Seattle the win there. Going to the Cardinals, Week 14. Coming back to the stadium, I have the Giants winning, actually. Last year, it was incredibly a close game, but it didn't really seem close. The Giants' offensive line gave up 8 sacks. They still have that good defensive line, meaning the Cardinals, but I think it's going to be an improved offensive line, a better one than last year. I mean, you'll probably have Thomas on it. You might have Gates going in, but I think the defense might be able to stop Arizona's offense. You do have DeAndre Hopkins, and Bradbury did well against Hopkins the last time those two matched up. You also have Christian Kirk. You also have Andy Isabella. That's the one I forgot about. And they did trade away David Johnson, but Kyler Murray's basically another running back, even though he is the quarterback. So I'm going to give New York Giants the win. Last time, as I said, it was closer than it was supposed to be. I think the final score was 27-21. The offensive line just couldn't hold up. And debate me on that one because a lot of people debate me and say, oh, Daniel Jones fumbled all the time. Well, yeah, pocket awareness is something he needs to get better at, but it's not his fault that the offensive line gave up 7 more sacks than they were supposed to. And obviously I don't have a guess on sacks of how many they were supposed to give up. Going now to the Cleveland Browns Week 15, Odell's revenge game. It's going to be tough. James Bradberry struggled against Odell Beckham in 2018 when the Giants versus the Panthers. I don't know that Bradberry will be able to handle 2 good receivers 2 weeks in a row. Jarvis Landry is their second receiver unless one of those gets hurt. DeAndre Baker, I don't think will be able to handle Jarvis Landry in his second year. Wasn't handling Amari Cooper too well in his first year. But the second year, he could be better, but right now I don't give him a lot of confidence, even though he did improve as the weeks went on last season. I'm going to give Cleveland the win. I think they have full potential to be a playoff team, and I think they have a better roster than the Giants. Week 16, I don't know if I should do much explaining for this one. Baltimore is hosting the Giants. They go down to face the AFC North again. They faced Cleveland the week before. Giants take the loss. It's going to be like the Jets primetime game. I think it's going to be a blowout, to be honest. Baltimore is Super Bowl ready and the Giants aren't. They have a way more talented roster than the Giants do. Baltimore gets the win on that. Week 17, I give Dallas the win. Dallas, I have them winning the divisions this year despite what all of this says. Obviously, I said I didn't log in. I think it's going to be closer than it will be in Jerry World. I think it's going to be a closer game. I just still think unless Dallas doesn't play their starters, that it's going to be, a possibly 10-point game. Dallas gets the win to finish the season right there. So the Giants' final record is 6-10. I think 7-9 they could also do, but right now it's going to look like 6-10, 4-12, possibly repeated, or 5-11. I think this team is more improved than last year. That's on paper. We have to see on the field with this new Pat Graham defense and this Jason Garrett offense. Tell me what you think of the predictions in the comments below. Thank you guys for supporting this. Remember, our podcasts are available on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, and Google Play. Also, follow our Instagram and Twitter pages at Bleeding Big Blue Podcast. Updates will be posted on there all the time. Thank you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, and share, as Ron Effect always says. Monday, we're having on Vincent Rapasardi of Big Blue Unbiased. Wednesday, we're having on Rohan Sagani, who's going to break down some film with me of some of the newer Giants. And then on Friday, Dan Duggan of The Athletic joins us. He's going to talk some Giants, and I'm going to ask him some questions. I haven't filled out a schedule for the week after, but that's our schedule for this week. Don't miss it. Remember, I mentioned the podcast platforms. Could be moving the podcast to those podcast platforms permanently. I could be just making content on YouTube, kind of like Talking Giants do and a lot of other podcasts. Stay safe, everybody, and have a good night.